Hello class, hola clase. Today we will be reading more out of our book Wonder by R.J. Palacio and thinking about character traits versus character feelings and the difference between those two, how to distinguish between those two. We'll also be reading We're All Wonders by R.J. Palacio in our small groups. Me pregunto, rasgos de character versus sentimientos. This is our reader's workshop in the 3rd grade. Let's begin. What do you wonder about today's topic? ¿Qué te preguntas sobre el tema de hoy? And students would either write their responses, or if we were virtual, they could type their responses to me. Our lesson objective. Students will be able to distinguish between a character's traits and feelings. Los estudiantes podrán distinguir entre los rasgos y sentimientos de un personaje. Can someone rephrase our learning objective in your own words? So I would ask students to raise their hands. Students would raise their hand and rephrase the learning objective to quickly assess if they're grasping the motive of our lesson. This is our visual checklist. We'll begin with a pre-teacher vocabulary. Second, we'll move into our mini lesson. Third, we'll do our yoga move to transition. Fourth, we'll move into small group stations. And fifth, we'll do a closure and share activity. It's time to listen. Turn your listening ears on, 3rd graders. All right, let's begin with our pre-teacher vocabulary, which begins our mini lesson. My turn. I'll go first. Yo hablo traits, or rasgos. Your turn. Tú hablas traits. We would repeat that twice with the kids. My turn. Traits are words used to describe who a character is. Traits are usually seen through actions, dialogue, and thoughts. Your turn. Traits are used to describe who a character is. Traits are usually seen through action, dialogue, and thoughts, so they would have repeated that back to me. An example is that Summer, one of the characters in Wonder, is kind. On page 119, Palacio writes, I sat with him that first day because I felt sorry for him. That's all. She felt badly he was sitting alone. She was kind and sat with him. Kind is a character trait. Turn and talk with a friend. Name one character trait or rasgos that you have. You can use the picture board in the left-hand corner to reference character traits that you have. I was thinking smart, brave, other words, the visuals that they can reference are in that corner. Okay, let's move into our second vocabulary word, feelings, sentimientos. Mi turno, I say feelings. Tu turno, you say feelings. We'd repeat that twice. Mi turno. Feelings are words to describe how a person is feeling at the moment. Tu turno, they'd repeat it. Feelings are words to describe how a person is feeling at the moment. An example is Augie feels cheerful, and I know this because on page 67 of Wonder, Augie said, my birthday party turned out to be so much smaller than I thought it would be, but it was still great. It really felt like there were a lot of people there to celebrate my birthday. He was feeling cheerful and happy, which are feelings. Turn and talk with a friend. Name one feeling or sentimientos that you have felt before. And students can reference the picture board. You can reference the picture board in the left-hand corner as feelings you could say to a friend. Okay, now this part of my mini lesson will be a think aloud. I'm going to read this passage and you will get a view into my thoughts and what I'm thinking. So we're focusing on Augie, our character, main character in Wonder, and we're focusing on character traits and character feelings, rasgos and sentimientos. So I'm going to begin reading, and as I read, I'll be jotting down notes into each section. So, driving, that's the title of the passage, the chapter. It was a long drive home. I fell asleep in the back seat like I always do, my head on Via's lap like she was my pillow, a towel wrapped around the seatbelt so I wouldn't drool all over her. Via fell asleep too, and Mom and Dad talked quietly about grown-up things I didn't care about. From this passage, I am thinking that Via and Augie, siblings, have a very close relationship. So I'm going to say Augie feels loved. They feel very close and they're kind of cuddling in the back seat. I don't know how long I was sleeping, but when I woke up, there was a full moon outside the car window. It was a purple night and we were driving on a highway full of cars, and then I heard Mom and Dad talking about me. We can't keep protecting him, Mom whispered to Dad, who was driving. We can't just pretend he's going to wake up tomorrow and this isn't going to be his reality because it is Nate. And we have to help him learn to deal with it. We can't just keep avoiding situations that... So sending him off to middle school like a lamb to the slaughter? Dad answered angrily, but he didn't even finish his sentence because he saw me in the mirror looking up. I sure know how I would feel if I heard my parents talking about something very important to me. I might feel excluded, which is another word for left out. He felt like he wasn't being included in the conversation, so he felt excluded. "What's a lamb to the slaughter?" I asked sleepily. "Go back to sleep, Augie," said Dad softly. "Everyone will stare at me at school," I said, suddenly crying. Oh, crying. That word tells me that he is feeling... Can anyone tell me? Raise your hand if you know what the word crying tells us. What does someone feel when they are crying? Students might respond with words like sad, upset. "Honey," Mom said. She turned around in the front seat and put her hand on my hand. "You know if you don't want to do this, you don't have to, but we spoke to the principal there and told him about you, and he really wants to meet you." "What did you tell him about me?" "How funny you are, how kind and smart." A light bulb should be going off in your heads because I see 3 words that are either character traits or feelings. Turn and talk to a friend. Is it a character trait or feeling? Kind, funny, and smart. Students will talk. I'll circulate around the room. They should come up with kind, funny, and smart. Yes, they are character traits. Then we will move down here. I will copy and paste these and move these. And we will continue reading just a little more of this passage here. So he read Dragon Rider when you were 6. He was like, wow, I have to meet this kid. If he read Dragon Rider when he was 6, that means he definitely is pretty intelligent and smart. He's a very fast learner. And now, did you tell him anything else I said? Mom smiled at me. Her smile kind of hugged me. "I told him about all your surgeries and how brave you are," she said. Thumbs up if you think brave is a character trait or a character feeling. Okay, character trait. I see thumbs for character trait, so I'm going to put character trait. Very good, class. I want you to do this in your small group sessions, and we will move into that shortly. But first, let's do a yoga move together. And this would normally be student-led, and I'd have one student lead the class in a yoga move and 3 deep breaths. We could do something like the tree. Okay, and moving on. This is our small group schedule. So let's look at this. We'll have 10 minutes in each section. We'll meet with the teacher, then students will move into a word sort in their groups, and then to the technology station. While we meet with teacher, that will take the form of guided reading. So this is an example. In group 1, which is my students who are below grade level in this literacy skill, which I will have assessed prior to the unit, students will have this chart to reference, and I'll go through this book with them. We Are All Wonders. And we'll think about what character traits we see and what character feelings we observe in Augie. And I have a little picture of Augie right there. And for example, we'll go through it, and I'm going to point out a specific page to give you a preview of what we might discuss. Sometimes they stare at me, they point or laugh, they even say mean things behind my back, but I can hear them. So I'd talk to the kids, how might that make you feel if someone was pointing or laughing? And then we go back to the chart and write embarrassed or ashamed, and I would help enhance their vocabularies and build upon what they tell me, how they might feel. And then he says it hurts my feelings, so that's another connection, feelings. But then he puts on his helmet, and I put on Daisy's helmets too, his dog, and blast off, up, 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 up through the clouds, and this page tells me, and I would ask students what this illustration might show them. It could be that he's imaginative, he's adventurous. So you would think about that as a group and fill out this chart. Our second guiding reading group, which is the at grade level students, and there would be some fluctuation between groups. Not everyone is exactly below, at, or above grade level, but those would be the groupings that they would be in. I know there would be a lot of differentiation within those. So we would read this passage, which is out of the Wonder Book, and it's a little more complex, and I would think about what character traits versus feelings. We were again focusing on Augie. what that character possesses. I would read those 2 pages, about a page and a half. And then in my third reading group, my kiddos who are above grade level in this scale, we would think about another character and go to another point of view to challenge their thinking, Charlotte. And we would think about her traits versus her feelings and putting those into the 2 categories. So we'd think about Charlotte. Students would also circulate around the room and do a word sort. Group 1 would have the visuals to accompany the words and Spanish cognates, and they could move those into either category. Word sort 2, my at grade level kids, or somewhat at grade level, would have no visuals but simpler words than group 3, which would have more complex words and more words to sort. At the technology station, students would watch the trailer, trailer of the Wonder movie, which we'll watch at the end of the unit. They would take out a piece of paper or jot down notes virtually and saca un pedazo de papel and write any feelings or character traits that they notice within the trailer. So this adds an auditory and visual component that will enhance student learning and provide a multimodal / multisensory approach. This is our wrap-up. Students will draw or type, dibujar o tipo, 2 things that they learned in today's lesson. This also serves as a formative assessment, so I can check to see if students are differentiating between feelings and character traits, and I will do a lot to determine that and prod them deeper to ensure that they have mastered this, but they don't have to master it today. We're going to keep working on this throughout the unit, and students will build upon their knowledge as we move through. Some ways I differentiated were I pre-taught the vocab, I added a audio and visual component with the movie trailer. The word sorts were differentiated by reading level and complexity in words. My guided reading and close reads also included varying levels of difficulty, including the picture book, We're All Wonders, might be useful for students learning English, or students with disabilities or typically developing students with lower reading skills, and then I moved the passage up in complexity based on reading level. Picture boards were available for our turn and talk, so students could reference those with their partners. Some modifications and accommodations, I used Spanish cognates and Spanish instruction throughout the lesson. Highlighter strips could be available to highlight certain passages and minimize distractions on the page. First then language for my students with autism and ADHD, behavior charts, and movement break schedules. And accommodations for Tyler, Anna, and Sam, who we discussed in my first interview. Tyler would again have the visual checklist to check off as we move through the lesson. We'd use first then language, and his Pokemon behavior chart would resurface, as with every other lesson I did with him. And he would receive stickers if he showed expected behaviors. Anna would also, I have an Augie and Me book, which is one of the third books in this series of Wonder Books, and she would have access to this if she finished early to think about characters, traits, and feelings in this book, and she would be placed in the highest reading level group to expand her skills. Sam would include the yoga break and would benefit from his normal movement break schedule and would be provided with opportunities to help classmates if he finished with his during the word sort activity. And thank you for listening to my lesson, and I really appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to this potential opportunity.